Then Nigel Johnston from Quality Trade provided a detailed presentation on the IAF research database. Dr. Ori Elat provided a general awareness training of the ISO 15189. Brahim Hula, IAF Communication and Marketing Committee Chair, provided a presentation of guidelines for the use of remote auditing methods in auditing management systems. Then we had the opportunity to hear Warren Merkel, Vice President, Policy and App, provided a presentation on best practices tips. Veronica Ramirez, Vice President, Veronica Ramirez, ILAC Marketing and Communication Chair, provided an updates on the activities of the IAF and ILAC Joint Working Group Communications. Then we had the opportunity to obtain an update of programs and activities supporting members from the different regions. Andrea Melo, Chair of IAC, provided a presentation addressing updates and the activities of IAC. Then Sitaram Hoshi, a convener of the APAC Capacity Buildings Committee, provided a presentation of the APAC Capacity Buildings activities. Maureen Lodge, a chair of EA, provided a presentation on how regulators and accreditations can work together using the AC legal framework and AI relationships. An example, Mustafa Kuma presented the writing report provided by AFRAC. Then Brahim Hula helped us with provided a presentation on the capacity buildings currently being undertaken by ARAC. Satka table reading a report covering updates from the region. And then we have the opportunity to hear Shanosa Yuldashova. She provided an engaging presentation on the journey OSAC undertook to become a signatory to the international arrangement. In the next slide, you can see some pictures about this meeting, the last meeting. And we want to thank all the speakers who supported us the last meeting. Now we want to talk with you about some important tips. One, in the next slide, I am going to explain about the communicate funding policy with JDSC members. This is the one remote meeting, and we will have one in-person meeting in Berlin, in Germany, in October before the General Assembly. It's important to share with you some important and good news. In the last meeting, in the last IAF and ILAC General Assembly, approved that the JDSC meetings will be streamed live, thereby reaching more members who for various reasons cannot travel to the IAF and ILAC in-person meetings. Funding policy with JDSC members. Like the previous year, this year there is a budget allocated for lower and middle economy members to participate in the General Assembly in the next October. We want to invite you to apply when the call is made. Thank you, everyone. Back to you, Sharon May.
Thank you, Carlos. Well, Carlos, thank you so much for your report. And it just showed how exciting the meeting was. And so we encourage our members to come on out to Berlin and participate in person if you can. So send in your funding requests early. Start sending them in now so you can get support. And in the chat, Carlos, we're seeing members from Mongolia, Hungary, Indonesia, many members from India, China, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Ireland, Thailand. We see Moldak, we see Janak, Jamaica, we see Caroline from Trinidad and Tobago, we see NABCL, We see so many members typing in the chat, and we are saying hi, good morning. We can't see you. We know you can see us, but we are happy to engage with you. And now it is my pleasure to welcome on stage the lovely Ileana Martinez. Ileana is one of the co-chairs of the IAF ISO IEC 17065 working group, but she represents the TIC Council. And I'll tell you a little bit about Ileana. Ileana is one of the divas from the IAAC region, and she is beautiful. Anytime you see her, she's just fabulously, fashionably attired. She has been our chair, yes. She's been a chair for the IAAC, so she's a past chair. She's also a past chair for the ILAC ARC, and she has participated in numerous committees and has contributed tremendously to the region and to the global accreditation industry. It is my pleasure to welcome her. She wears a new hat now at the TIC Council to share with us on her work in the working group, and she'll tell you a little bit about the TIC Council. So over to you, Ileana.
Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Walker. You're very kind. A little embarrassing, that presentation, but I certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's very good to see so many people in this webinar, and very nice group, and I hope I can show a little bit of the information that you may be interested in learning about. As was mentioned, my name is Ileana Martinez, and I am currently working for the TIC Council as Trade and Accreditation Director. I am here today, though, as the co-chair of the IAF working group for certification based on 17065. And on that note, here is my first slide. Again, the IAF Technical Committee has a working group of long-standing that addresses issues related to ISO IEC 17065. The conveners of this working group are Nikki Jackson of ANAB and myself. The group has met in November in Montreal, and a lot of people were there in person and quite a few also virtually. Hope you were able to attend. We also met in May of last year at Belfast. And previous to that, in October 2019 in Frankfurt, and April 2019 in Mexico City, and in October 2018 in Singapore. You will notice there's a gap. It's not a mistake. A gap. There were no meetings in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So we do have a lot to catch on now in our working group. The next meeting of the working group within the suite of this midterm meetings of ILAC and IAF will take place next Monday, April the 22nd. I understand that a lot of you were still thinking that the meeting took place yesterday. That was the original schedule, but it was changed a while back. So the meeting is next Monday. And if you are interested in attending, since it's virtual, you still have the opportunity to email either Nikki or myself, and we'll send you the link to the Zoom meeting. Okay, the scope of the working group has been modified. We talked about this in Montreal to make it clear that the working group addresses the full scope of ISO IEC 17065 which is not only products, but also the certification of systems and processes. The scope now also will include the standards ISO IEC 17007 and ISO IEC 17067. And of course, during our meetings, we explore other topics that are usually submitted by members or issues that members have an interest in discussing. And that's what we usually will do at our next meeting on Monday. I did want to say that even though the group has approved the informal enlargement of the scope to systems and processes in addition to products, even though it was always included, but we have always talked about products only. The paperwork within IAF is a little bit behind our decision. So you may see in a lot of places still a reference to the working group as addressing basically the certification of products only. But as I say, we cover now a lot more. Okay, the main standard that the working group deals with, of course, is ISO IEC 17065, which is requirements for bodies certifying products, processes, and services. This standard was published in 2012, and of course is one of the pillars of the conformity assessment world. CASCO has a policy of systematically reviewing all standards every 5 years to make sure they are up to date, and then they are confirmed, or they can be modified. And this systematic review was launched early this year, 2024, to see if the ISO members think that this document needs revision. The systematic review is currently still open and will not close until June the 3rd. So I understand that everybody is very animated at the prospect of reviewing and revising the standard. And I personally think it will happen, but the decision has not been formally made yet by ISO CASCO. So we want you to keep your ideas about the standards, and we can share and talk about it at the working group, but let's keep in mind that the decision to revise standard has not been made yet, and it won't be made until June of this year. Our next speaker, my friend Liliana Soma, will go through the current standard, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot about the current issues and possible topics that may be included in a potential future revision. I also wanted to share with you that ANAP is having a webinar on also the possible revision of 17065. And this is a webinar that they have kindly open to anybody that is interested. The link to the information and the event and to register is here at the bottom of this slide. Next, please. Thank you. So one of the additional standards that the working group is now charged with tracking and working on is ISO IEC 17007 that was published in 2009. And this document provides guidance for drafting normative documents suitable for use in conformity assessment. The decision was made earlier this year to revise and update this standard, which of course is relatively old, from 2009. And the work started in December. The plans of the working group is to have a published, agreed document by May 2025. The conveners, we have two conveners, I'm sorry. On this working group, Mr. Sean from Germany and Dandan Seng from China. There are 41 experts in this working group. As you probably are aware, IAF has the possibility of sending representatives to Casco working groups to represent the IAF interest. And in this particular case, as is often, as is the policy in IAF, we requested nominations of willing members to represent IAF in the working group. And it was Matthew Pitt who was selected. I believe he may have been the only volunteer. So Matthew Pitt is the one that is there in the working group representing IAF. Now, while this document talks about normative drafting requirements in standards for conformity assessment, there are at the end of this document some provisions relating to schemes. So that becomes an important document and revision to pay attention to. The first committee draft, which is the first document that is sent out for comment from the working group, was issued on March 8th with a deadline for comments May the 3rd. Okay, next slide. The other revision that we are tracking in the IAF working group is ISO IEC 17067, which was published excuse me, in 2013. This document provides fundamentals for product certification and guidelines for product certification schemes. I think this document has been very useful throughout the years to many organizations and stakeholders and government agencies trying to design conformity assessment programs. And so it's a very relevant document. The decision was also made to revise it. It's also relatively old, from 2013. And the work started in October of last year, with a publication expected in September of 2025. We have this two conveners, Stephanie Waring from Germany and Andre Sandy from Bolivia, with 48 members. So these working groups in Casco are relatively large. So again, the IAF representatives, this time we got 2 volunteers. Teresa Barnett and Matthew Pitt are the ones that should be representing the interest of IAF and reporting back to us on what's going on in this working group. The working group has met several times already, but they have not yet issued any documents for comments. So unless you're in the working group, you probably have not seen it. You probably haven't seen the draft that they're working. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can participate in ISO Casco work. It is very important that the development of all these standards have the broadest possible input from everybody that is going to be touched by this standard. And there are 3 ways to participate. The first one is through your National Mirror Committee. That is a committee that is usually set up by your national standards bodies to follow the work in ISO Casco. this is, in my opinion, the most effective and powerful way to participate in the work of CASCO is through your national committee. Typically, those committees meet in the country to prepare for the CASCO working group. It doesn't mean when you participate in these committees that you have to go to the meetings of the working group, which are usually in Geneva, usually 3 days, and which is, you know, it can be a little bit burdensome to travel to Geneva and be there 3 full days, but you can contribute through your national standards bodies. And typically, as I say, they're called national mirror committees because they're supposed to mirror the work of CASCO. That's one way that I encourage you very, very much to look into, so you can influence the work of any standards, these 3 standards in particular we're talking about today. There is, of course, also a possibility of working through IAF. As I mentioned before, IAF is allowed 3 representatives to any CASCO working group, and it's something that is available to any IAF member that is willing to volunteer. And as I mentioned before, the IAF, how it's done, it's that they launch the, I think it's a technical committee that will launch a request for nominations to represent it. And of course, this will happen if and when 17065 is revised. So that's another way that you can participate in the work of CASCO. Next. Well, that's all I wanted to share with you today, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have about the work of this the IAF working group on these issues. Thank you very much.
There was only one question, Ileana, and it was regarding the time for the webinar, the ANAB webinar, the free ANAB webinar. But I typed in the chat that folks can check the ANAB website for the registration link, and they will get all the details.
Yes. It's on the 18th, very soon. And it's in the afternoon in the US. I think it's 2 p.m. in the US. But that's from memory. So as Sharon may say, is obviously the best way is to check and register. And I'm sure it'll be very informative, as will Liliana's presentation. I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you very much to everybody for your attention, and I hope I have presented some information that is valuable and useful to you. And thank you to Sharon May and Carlos for the opportunity to participate in this webinar.
Thank you, Ileana.
Thank you, Ileana, for a very good presentation. Over to you, Carlos.
Okay, now we have the next speaker, Liliana Soma. She's Executive Director of the Uruguayan Accreditation Body. She was President of the IAC, and she was being dedicated to quality and accreditation for many years. With us, Liliane.
Thank you, Carlos.
Before Liliane comes on, though, Carlos, can we just pause for a second and take the first poll?
Okay, sorry, Liliane, wait a minute. Okay, now we have the first part of the poll. The first question you have in the screen. At the IF and ILAC 2024 annual meeting in Berlin, you will be helped in attending in person, yes or no? You can answer the question, please. Okay. We have 1 minute more, or maybe now we have the results. Okay, the results. 46% will be attend in person in the next meeting.
Okay.
50% maybe.
Okay, so that means, Carlos, that we definitely have to have a webinar mechanism so that they can all benefit. But let me help you add a few more details to Lillian's introduction. It is truly a pleasure to welcome Lillian to be our trainer this morning, and that's one of the key components to her work at the Uruguayan accreditation body, which she has led for 19 years. And Lillian has been a force to reckon with in the IAAC. She's not only been our chair for 4 years and chaired many committees, but Lillian's technical expertise and eye for detail and thoroughness is something that marks her. She, in her attendance at every MLAG meeting, she will have comments on all reports. She is very detail oriented. Lillian comes to us with a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and I'm very happy to note that that's one of my areas too, chemistry. So we coordinate on that front. Bachelor's degree in chemistry. She has management degrees from the Uruguayan Institute of Technical Standards, environmental management degree. She also has a degree in chemical engineering. So Lillian comes with very robust technical qualifications. But to note, she has been a quality inspector, technical development of industrial paints, responsible for raw material and etc. She has done effluent treatment management. She has done the gamut of chemical assessments in her country, in Uruguay. And she has sat on the ILOC executive for a number of years. She's a past JDSC co-chair, and she currently sits on the IAF executive. It is our pleasure, Carlos, to welcome Lillian Soma, who will be our presenter today on the ISO IEC 17065 standard. She will tell us about the standard, and she will also, I'm sure, give us her opinion on whether she thinks it should be revised or not. So help us welcome Lillian. And I noticed in the chat that there were persons indicating that they're coming from other countries. So we see you and we recognize you. We now have 165 members on this webinar. And of course, it will be aired on YouTube. So I'm sure the numbers will climb. So over to you, Lillian. And thank you for accepting our invitation to present.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you, Jarome. Thank you, Carlos, for inviting me to make this presentation. I'm going to present especially the requirements in 17065, but if the time allows, I would like to present something in relation to 17067, because as Ileana said, there are links. And also something in relation to IAF MD 25. But I think that we are going to stay for the time we have only with 17065. Okay. I need to share the presentation first. Let me see here. And trying. Okay. Let me move this here. Okay. So let's begin with this. So as I was telling you, I'm going to speak in relation to the requirements of ISO IEC 17065, and also, if the times allows me, something in relation to 17067, because they are linked and one standard refers to the other. So let's begin with the standard for requirement for bodies certifying product, processes, and services. So we have that the overall aim of certifying products, processes, or services is to give confidence to all interested parties that a product, process, or service fulfill specific requirements. That, as Ileana told us, we have another CASCO standard that have requirements for making these requirements. So the value of certification is the degree of confidence and trust that is established by an impartial and competent demonstration of fulfillment of specified requirements by a third party. So impartial and competent are two words very important, because these are the paramounts that the standards, this standard and all the level 3 accreditation standards intend to achieve. So, which are the parties that have an interest in this certification? Here are some examples, but are not all what we can have, and representatives of all these stakeholders are included in the CASCO working groups, are included in our committees. So we can, this standard is relevant for governmental authorities, for non-governmental organizations, for the consumers and other members of the public, for the clients of the certification body, and for the customers of the organizations whose products, processes, or services are certified or are going to be certified or are asked for someone to be certified. So an important thing that is in this standard is that the 4I principle is contained by clarifying that the review and decision has to be performed by persons different from those who carried out the evaluation, but review and decision can be done by the same person. This is an important thing, because in other standards we used to work with, for example, in testing or inspection, this specific requirement is not there. So the standard states that the certification decisions shall be made by persons that can be employed or under a contract with the certification body, meaning that subcontracting or delegating the certification decision is not allowed. We are going to see in next slide, when we arrive to the competence requirements, that the certification body can use internal persons or external persons, and that the certification body can subcontract or outsource many parts of what is required in the standard to be done, but the decision cannot be outsourcing. So enter into the specific requirements of the standard, we have, like in all CASC standards, clause 3, that is terms and definitions. And we can see that in this standard, the definitions are based on what is stated in ISO IEC 17000. And we have definitions for client, consultancy, evaluation, product, process, services, certification requirements, product requirements, certification scheme, and certification scheme owner. And these two are marked in strong black because these are concepts that we need to use to make a certification process. And the requirements for these, for certification schemes and certification scheme owners, are stated in ISO IEC 17067, and that's why this is also a very important standard for this whole system of certifying product, services, or process. It is also, we have also definition of scope of certification and, of course, of certification body. And then we have the general requirements in relation to legal and contractual matters. And we have the legal responsibility because the certification body needs to be an organization that is legal responsible. The certification agreement that the certification body needs to have with the organization that is going to have the product certified, the product processes or services. And a very important issue here is the use of licenses, certificates, and marks of conformity that also need to be have an agreement, a legal binding agreement to establish how to use these licenses or marks. Here comes the requirement, the important requirement of impartiality and how to manage it. So the certification body needs to identify the risks to impartiality, and this risk to impartiality need to be assessed in relation to other parts in the same legal entity, because certification body can be a legal entity itself or be part of a bigger organization. We are going to see later on some examples. Impartiality in relation to other separate legal entities, because the certification body is going to have a lot of relations with other organizations, and this can put risks to the impartiality, and they need to be evaluated and mitigated. And they need to put firewalls to organizations or personnel providing consultancy, because we need to have clear differentiations between how to implement the requirements of this standard in the organization and how to evaluate that the organization complies with the requirements that are stated in the standard. Also important is to have arrangements in relation to liability and financing, and the certification body must have appropriate provisions, could be insurance or reserves, to cover legal liabilities arising from its operations. This is very important. It's very important that the certification body has a real understanding of the consequences of something going wrong, and have the backup provisions to fulfill the contracts and to be prepared. And also the certification body, that is in relation with this, the certification body must have the financial stability and resources required to its operation. And this part is very different from organization to organization, from country to country, from type of certification, if they are there are products, there are processes, there are services. So it needs to be very deeply understand and assess and evaluate and mitigate it in the case of having an issue or a risk. Another important thing is that the certification body cannot have discriminatory conditions. So the policies and procedures under which the certification body operates, as well as its administration, the governance, must be non-discriminatory. So the services of the certification body must be accessible to all organizations, and not conditions can be put on this. Of course, the organizations that can be certified are only the ones that comply with the requirements. This is the only, let's say, condition. So access to the certification process should not depend on the size of the client or a membership to any association or group, and should not depend on the number of certifications already issued. This part is important because in some cases, other schemes, other kinds of certifications that are not under the umbrella of the ISO CASCO, maybe they only certify members that are part of the organization. And if this is the case, this certification body is not complying with the requirements in 17065, and if we are talking about accreditation, we cannot accredit them. So another important requirement is regarding confidentiality. So the certification body must be responsible through legal compliance commitments to the management of all information obtained or created during the performance of the activities of certification. There are some parts, for example, the information that the client already makes available to the public is not confidential because certification body made it not confidential. So, and all other information is considered private information and should be considered confidential. And the certification body must inform the client in advance if they are going to release some information for any reason. It could be legal requirement, or it could be stated previous in a contract that some kind of information is going to be released in some specific circumstances. In this case, for example, when there are scheme owners, external scheme owners, we are going to talk of this later, I hope. In the contracts that the accreditation body or the certification body or are already some established that some kind of specific information is going to be shared with the other part, but as all the parts involved are aware of this before the beginning of the certification process or in the accreditation process, there is not an issue. But in all the other cases, it would be an issue. And that's why we are going to see in all the other clauses of the standard that always there are references to impartiality or confidentiality in the rest of the standard to be tied to this specific clause here. And here we can see that when the certification body is required by law or by contractual provisions for the disclosure of confidential information, the client or persons involved must be notified of the information provided unless prohibited by law. And information relating to the client obtained from sources other than the client should be treated as confidential also. Now we are in the part of publicly available information. So the certification body must maintain and make available upon request the following information. So some informations are is a requirement of the standard to have some kind of information publicly available. And this information is in relation to information about or reference to the certification scheme, including the certification procedures, the way of how the evaluation is going to be done, rule and procedure for granting, maintaining, expanding, or withdrawing the certification, description of how the certification body obtains its financial and general information about the fees charges to applicants or clients. Another thing that needs to be public is description of the rights and duties of applicants and clients, including requirements, restrictions, or limitations on the use of the name of the certification body, and restrictions on the use of the certification mark and on the way of referring to the certification granted. And another thing that needs to be publicly available is information on the procedure for handling complaints and appeals. And these all are requirements, and the requirement is to be publicly available. The requirement is not to be in the web page, but the huge majority of certification bodies have this information available on the internet. So now we are coming to clause 5, that are structural requirements of the certification body. And we are going to see here which are the principal lines that the certification body needs to take into account and implement to comply with this requirement in relation to the structure of the organization. So, certification activities must be structured and managed so that safeguard impartiality. So, again, the important thing is the impartiality. So, the structure needs to safeguard this. The certification body must document the structure of its organization, showing the duties, the responsibilities, and the authorities of management and other certification personnel. All the persons that are involved in the certification body and are going to have a role to work in the process need to have this clear. And so the persons and the committees, also the committees. When the certification body is a defined part of a legal entity, the structure should include the line of authority and the relationship with the other parts of the organization. Important, and here we have in this part of the standard a detailed list of things that the management of the certification body must identify and assign the responsibility to a committee, to a group of people, or to a person who is going to have the general authority and the responsibility for each of these activities. And the activities are the development of policies relating to the operation of the certification body, supervising the implementation of these policies and procedures, supervision of the finances of the certification body, the development of the certification activities, the development of the certification requirements, the core of the process, the evaluation, the review, the decision, the delegation of authority to committees or individuals. And these are things that are important to be clear and to be assigned. And another thing that is not here, but we are going to see it in next class, in class number 6, is that the competence for each one of these activities needs to be clear and needs to be established for the whole organization. It also is important the contractual agreements, the provision of appropriate resources for the certification activities is very important, and the response to complaint and to appeals, and who is going to manage the management system that is needed to support all these impartiality and competence requirements that we are seeing and are going to see in the next slide. The certification body must have formal rules for the designation, the terms of reference, and the functioning of all the committees involved in the certification process. And the reference to 7 here is because the certification process is established in clause 7. Such committees should not have commercial, this is very important, committees and each person also. Such committees should not have commercial, financial, or other pressures that could influence the decision. And the certification body must retain the authority to appoint or release the members of these committees. And again, in the structure, it's important to have a mechanism for safeguarding impartiality, which can be a committee that can be established by by each certification body, or more than one certification body can have the same impartiality committee if they want. Or it could be a committee implemented by the scheme owner or a governmental authority, that these governmental authorities also are scheme owners, especially in their regulatory field, or any equivalent part. Here, in my experience, I always see that the certification body have a impartiality committee, or the names can vary, but what I always see committees to comply with this requirement of the standard. I cannot tell you anything else because I have no experience of seeing something that is different of a committee. But the standard is not requiring a committee. It's requiring a mechanism for safeguarding impartiality. Now we are entering into chapter 6, that is resource requirements. And the first requirement that we are going to talk about, and the standard is put this as the first part, is a personnel. So the certification body must employ or have access to a sufficient number of personnel to cover the operations related to certification schemes and standards and other applicable documents and regulations. Personnel must be competent for the functions they perform. And here is important that the competence needs to be established for each certification scheme and for each standard under a certification scheme. So even though there are some competencies of the certification body that could be the same for all the schemes and all the standards and all the products and all the processes and all the services, these requirements of competence need to be evaluated and seen for each specific scheme, standard, product. So we have layers of competence that we need to be sure that are established and that are enough to be sure that the certification body has the competence they need to perform the activities that are required to be done in this standard, or in some scheme owners put additional requirements to the requirements that are established in this standard, and these need to be complied by the certification body and evaluated and assured by the accreditation body when the certification body is accredited as the demonstration of compliance with the requirements in this standard. So the staff, including committee members, the committee members also need to be competent, and the competencies they need to comply with need to be established. Also, the staff, of course, the external bodies or the personnel acting on behalf of the certification body must maintain the confidentiality. The last part here is, as I told you a few slides ago, again, competency, confidentiality, and impartiality. We are going to see the impartiality requirements for personnel or the resources here also. Here, and when I'm saying here, I'm saying in this chapter 6 also. So, the certification body must establish, implement, and maintain a procedure for the management of the competencies of the personnel involved in the certification process. The procedure should require the certification body to determine the personal competencies criteria, and again, this needs to be established for all personnel in all the steps of the process of certification, and all the process, the impartiality process, all the process we are talking since the beginning of this presentation. Identify training needs, because this is something that is alive, so it's changing, and need to provide this training to fill these gaps, has training programs, and need to demonstrate that the personnel have the required competencies for the duties and responsibilities that each one carries out. Another important thing is that the persons need to be formally authorized for the functions they are authorized to carry. And another important thing is that the certification body needs to monitor the performance of the personnel, just to verify that they are competent and they are compliant with all the requirements. And this part, these specific requirements that I'm talking now are not exclusive of this standard. This is something that is necessary to comply with for all the Casco standards that are level 3, are standards level 3 in our accreditation work. So this is the same. Of course, the requirements are not the same as the requirements that need to be fulfilled in a laboratory, testing laboratory, or calibration laboratory, or inspection body, or management system certification body, but the idea, the process is the same in all these standards. It's something that is transversal to all the standards. So, another important thing, the certification body needs to have a contract with the staff. So the certification body must require personnel involved in the certification process to sign a contract or other document by which they commit to comply with the rules defined by the certification body, including those related to the confidentiality here. Another thing that is important, the independence from commercial and other interests, because here we are talking only of independent assessment or independent evaluation. We are talking only about third-party certification. So all the process needs to be independent from any pressures. And for that, it's important that the persons that are involved in this process, in each part of the process, declare any previous or current association with, for example, a supplier or product designer, or a service provider or developer, or a process operator or developer for the evaluation of or certification to which they will be assigned. So the idea is that the certification body needs to know everything, any potential threat to the independence and to the impartiality. Here we are talking about independence, but impartiality is the same. And then the certification body needs to decide how these threats are going to be mitigated, if they could be mitigated, or if some of these problems or threats are being considered to be very important. So one mitigation is not to assign activities to persons that have these problems with independence or the impartiality or the confidentiality. And as I said, the certification body should use this information to decide how they are going to organize the process. So, resources requirements. Until now, we are talking about persons. Now we are going to talk of other things that the certification body needs to verify the compliance with the product, process, or service requirement. So, when the certification body carries out evaluation activities, either with its internal resources or with other resources under the direct control, the important thing here is that the control of what is happening is with the certification body. But all the resources need to comply with the applicable requirements in the CASCO standard. And for example, if the certification body needs to make tests to verify the compliance with the product requirements, this laboratory needs to comply with the requirements in ISO IEC 17025. The same if the certification body is using or needs to do inspections. In this case, the inspections must meet the applicable requirements in ISO IEC 17020. And if as part of the requirements of the scheme, we have the need to verify or to audit the management system of the factory, for example, or of the organization that is providing the service or doing the process. In this case, the auditing process needs to comply with the applicable requirements in 17021-1 and -1 3 in the case of management system. So, and here is not specifically said, but if the certification body use another product certification body to do anything in the process, so this product certification body needs to comply with 17065. The same happens when the certification body is going to use external resources. So the certification body must outsource the evaluation activities only with organizations that comply with the applicable requirements of the international standard. In the other case, we were talking about, I'm going to go back. Here, in 621, we are talking about, for example, the certification body. The certification body has a testing lab, so the testing lab needs to comply with 17025. The certification body is the one that make the inspections, so the inspections need to comply with the applicable requirements of 17020, and the same with auditing the management system. In this case, the certification body, for example, do not have testing labs, so they are going to contract a testing lab that is going to make the test for them. So in this case, the testing lab that the certification body is going to contract needs to comply with 17025, the inspection body with 17020, and the organization that is going to do the auditing process for the management system with 17021. The standard is not requiring that the organization that is going to be contracted is accredited, because it's not requiring that the organizations complied with all the requirements of the respective TASCO standards. The standard says the relevant requirements. So first, the certification body needs to determine which one are the relevant ones. Relevant for what, you can ask, you may be thinking. It's relevant to ensure that the test is done in a competent and impartial way, or the inspection is done in a competent and impartial way. So this is what this standard is saying here. The same in relation to the internal resources. The certification body do not need to comply, do not need to be accredited as a testing lab or as an inspection body to be accredited as a product certification body. And when evaluation activities are contracted the certification body must ensure that evaluation activities are managed in a way that provides confidence in the results. And this is important. So, which is relevant, all the things that are needed to provide confidence in the results. And that the records are viable to justify and the trust. The certification body must have a legally binding contract with the body that provides the externally contracted services, which shall include the impartiality and confidentiality issues and not conflict of interest. So, in some cases, I think that is next, but I'm going to say here, this legally binding contract that the standard is asking here, we can have some, for example, I'm going to put an example. Here in Uruguay, we are a very small country and we are very few people. So we don't have, for example, testing laboratories for all the products that are, for example, in many of the regulatory schemes that are asking certification of the product made by a certification body accredited. So, in many cases, the certification bodies need to use test reports that are from laboratories that the requirement in that case that the scheme owner established is that the testing laboratory needs to be accredited for by us or by a signatory of the arrangements, in this case of IEC or ILAC, because we are talking about testing. But in not all the cases, the certification, the Uruguayan certification bodies had a contract with that laboratory. Why? Because our testings that are made in that laboratories, once in a while, maybe they change. So, but this is allowed in the scheme owner, in the scheme. The scheme owner have specific established that this kind of test reports can be used. But the important thing here is that the certification body must be responsible for all the activities contracted externally to another organization. And is the certification body the one that ensures that the body providing externally contracted services and the personnel of that externally contracted body are not involved either directly or through another employer. So we need here the issue is already excuse me, is that the certification body must be responsible for all here the competence at the end is responsible for the competence of the persons that made that testing. So the certification body is the one that needs to be sure and put requirements to be sure that the persons were competent, were impartial, didn't have conflict of interest with that product. So this needs to be documented in the policies of the certification body, the procedures, and the records, and everything. So here we are entering in the chapter. Yes. Okay, I was going to say that this is a very good moment to make a break to
Break,
answer the questions.
absolutely. Yes. Yes, so we do have a couple questions for you. And the first question that was raised when you were talking about competencies, the question asked, what is the difference between duties and responsibilities?
Oh my God. This is I think maybe it's you or Iliana, sorry, because these duties and responsibilities, we have this problem in Spanish. The translation is very difficult. So maybe you can explain to most of the audience that are not native English speakers which are the difference. So we are going to have a better translation to our own languages.
Yes, so most persons would have clear job description that will identify the responsibilities and the tasks that should be included in their work plan. It would be similar to their duties. Some persons use the term interchangeably, others may say duties, and some may say responsibilities, but technically they're the same thing, but it should be clearly defined what the responsibilities are or what the duties are, and these would normally be included in the person's job description. So hope that helps. All right.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon May, because here, at least here in the Spanish translation working group that we have, that is for all the countries that speak Spanish, we always believe that in English there is a difference, but now I learned that it's not.
Okay, good. All right, so there's a question. Is there any other mechanism to safeguard impartiality except a committee? I think you answered it, but I suppose they want you to answer again.
Yes, I think that there is. I never seen something different from a committee, but in the moment that I was speaking about this requirement, I pointed out that the standard do not require a committee, even though the huge majority of certification bodies have a committee. But I don't have any example because I didn't see the many certifications bodies that I have been in, something different from a committee where all the interest parties are in. And if you allow me, I can tell you that in 17011 we have a very similar, not to say equal, requirement. And as far as I can remember, in all the accreditation bodies that I've been doing peer evaluations, I always saw a committee or at least a group of people that represents the different stakeholders. So I don't have any example. And if someone in the audience has another example, please put it in the chat and we are going to learn from them.
Okay, excellent. So the point is that the standard does not prescribe a committee. Most persons use a committee, most CBs use a committee, but if you happen to be assessing a CB and they do not have a committee, but they can demonstrate that they have a mechanism for impartiality, then you have to accept that mechanism once it's working. I think that's it in a nutshell. Okay, so we have two other questions. One is, if there is a CB, so if there's a CB that also performs inspection activities, it means that CB needs to be ISO IEC 17020 accredited before it can be ISO IEC 17065 accredited for the products or services that it is certifying through said inspection. I think you answered this one already, but go ahead,
Yes.
Lily.
Yes, no, because the standard do not require the testing labs or the inspection bodies or any other CAP that the certification body needs to use to be accredited. And this is not a requirement that is established in the standard, and it's not established as a requirement in any of the schemes, certification schemes that I've been working with. The 17065 only requires the testing labs or the inspection bodies or whatever the conformity assessment activity that is being performed to comply with the relevant, or somewhere the relevant requirements of the respective CASCO standard. So a test lab needs to comply with the relevant requirements of 17025. In the example of the question was an inspection body. So that inspection body in the question needs to comply with the relevant requirements of 17020. So it do not have to be accredited, and it doesn't need to comply with all the requirements of 17020, at least what is said in this standard.
Okay.
Scheme owners can ask for these other additional CAPs to be accredited, but this is a requirement of the scheme owner. The scheme owner that could be a private scheme owner or a regulatory body that establish a scheme of certification. But it's not a requirement of 17065. This is the same of the impartiality committee. Impartiality committee is not a requirement. And the 17065 do not require other CAPs to be accredited to the respective CASCO standard. But if the scheme owner put this as a requirement, so in this case, is a requirement, but not here.
So the standard doesn't require it, but the scheme owner may require it. And if the scheme owner requires it, then you have to conform with those requirements. But the 17065 does not require the testing lab, inspection body, or management system CB to be accredited. And that's interesting. All right. So we have
but Sharon May, but it is a requirement to comply with the important requirements.
But not to be accredited.
Exactly. Not one extreme, but not the other one.
Right. Okay, great. All right. So the other question is, if the product CB relies on evaluation results prior to application, how will the CB demonstrate that it has legally binding contracts as specified in clause 6.2.2.3?
If I already talked in relation to this, in some cases, the scheme owner is the one that allows this to rely on previous test reports, for example, or in previous inspections, or in previous one case that is previous but continue. For example, in the case when a scheme has a requirement of assessing the management system, if the organization has a accredited certification to 9001, this is not, maybe the product certification is not going to have a legally binding contract with the management system certification body that issued the accredited certificate, but we can use that. The requirement of the contract here is because the certification body needs to be responsible for the result.
Right.
And if they are going to use something that is made by another organization previous to the beginning of the certification process or during the process to give the certification body is the one who needs to be sure that the organization that issued that certificate previous to the process or in the middle of the process is competent, is impartial, let's say, complies with the relevant requirements of 17025 or 17020 or the standard that is applicable.
Yes, good answer. And another suggestion is that even before accreditation, the CB should practice to have legally binding contracts with their suppliers. All right, so we are gonna go to a break. We're gonna take a quick break of 10 minutes. We're running behind, so please come back on time. We're going to ask Chantal to put that 10 minutes on the clock so that you can get back here right on time for us to resume the workshop. Thank you, Lily, for the presentation so far. See you in 10 minutes.
See you.
I wrote a song for you and all the things you do, and it was all yellow. So then I took my turn. Oh, what a thing to have done, and it was all yellow. Your skin, oh yeah, your skin and bones turning into something beautiful. You know I love you so. You know I love you so. I swam across, I jumped across for you. Oh, what a thing to do, 'cause you were all yellow. I drew a line, I drew a line for you. Oh, what a thing to do, and it was all yellow. Your skin, oh yeah, your skin and bones turning into something beautiful. You know, for you I bleed myself dry. For you I bleed myself dry. It's true. Look how they shine for you. Look how they shine for you. Look how they shine for. Look how they shine for you. Look how they shine for you. Look how they shine. Look at the stars. Look how they shine for you. And all the things you do. If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I go, but I know I'll think of you every step of the way. And I will always love you. I will always love you. Bittersweet, treats you kind. And I hope you have all you dreamed of. And I wish you joy and happiness. But above all this, I wish you love. And I will always love you. I will always love you. Will always love you. Will always love you. Will always love you. I will always, always. I will always, always love you.
So welcome back. And we are now going to transition to the second half of the presentation, and we invite Lillian to take control once more. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. I will begin to share this again and put this in presentation mode. Okay, I hope you are seeing. Okay. Here. So now we are entering into the chapter 7, that is process requirements. And the standard begins with saying that the requirements against which customers' products are evaluated should be those that are found in standards and other specified normative documents. And also says that if explanations on the application of these documents for a specific certification scheme are required, this must be formulated by the relevant persons or committees and impartial experts who have the necessary technical competence. Again, here, if you need something as part of the process to clarify the requirements or something else, you need to be sure that this documentation, additional documentation, is made by persons, committees that are impartial, again, and competent. And as we've seen early this morning for me, in the presentation of Ileana, guidance on the development of schemes is given in ISO IEC 1707-67, and the guidance on the development of normative requirement is in 17007. So, at the beginning, the important thing is that the certification body needs to ask the client to fulfill an application and needs to make an application review. What is that? The application. The application is not a specific format. It's that the certification body needs to obtain all the information necessary to complete the certification process in accordance with the relevant certification scheme. And here we are going to talk about certification schemes a lot. The certification body must carry out a review of the information to be sure that the information about the client and the product is sufficient to carry out the certification process. Additionally, be sure that any known difference of understanding are resolved and the scope of the requested certification is very well defined, and the resources that are needed to comply with this process are available by the certification body to carry out all evaluation activities. And the certification body needs to be sure that it has the competence and capacity to carry out the certification activity. here it's important that before they accept the client, the certification body needs to have all the resources they need before. So important things that the certification body needs to put an eye on are: the certification body must have a process to identify whether the application for certification of the client includes a type of product, what is going to be certified, a normative document, which are the requirements that the certification body is going to verify that that product complies with. A certification scheme, this is very important, because if we have the product and we have the requirements the product needs to comply with, and we don't have a certification scheme, we cannot have a certification process, because we need to know how many times we are going to assess the product to compare with the requirements. Are we going to take only one sample? Are we going to have a representative sample? Are we going to assess all the products in the batch? Are we going to certify a batch, or are we going to certify a production? And all these things need to be defined in the scheme of certification. And this is the most important thing, having a certification scheme, because it's not the same to say that I'm going to certify this glass and I'm going to test only one glass every 10 years, or I'm going to test 2,000 glasses every 2 minutes, just to be in the two extremes of the issue, because it's not the same certification. And the certification body needs to be competent for all the parts of this process and have resources to do whatever is needed and asked in the certification scheme. So, again, the issue that the certification body must ensure that it has the competency and capacity for all the certification activities, because you may have a competent laboratory to test the class, but if the scheme is requiring to test 2,000 glasses, maybe you don't have the capacity to do that. So this is very important also. The certification body must decline to carry out specific certification if it lacks the competence or capacity for the certification activity that it is required. The certification, here is the one of the questions. If the certification body relies on certification that it has already granted to the client, similar processes, or that has given to other clients, for example, if we are talking about different schemes and both schemes are asking for an audit of the management system. The management system is one, but it's not the same, because maybe when in the audit of the first scheme you see some parts, and in the other audit you need to see the other one. So it's not so linear that, oh, it's already assessed. If the certification body wants to skip some parts, because they can't skip if they can demonstrate that are the same, then must refer to the existing certifications in the records. So in the records, the certification body needs to say, oh, I'm not going to do this because I already did the same in in this other process. So the certification body must have a plan for the evaluation activity. It can be a generic plan applicable to all activities in the process of this certification scheme, which includes the evaluation of the management system, or can be a specific plan for a particular activity or a combination of both. And the certification body must ensure that all information or documentation necessary is available to carry out the process. The certification body must assign personnel to carry out each evaluation task, and the certification body must execute the evaluation activities with internal resources and must manage externally contracted resources according to the evaluation plan. Products must be evaluated against the requirements covered by the scope of certification. The certification body should only rely on the results of an evaluation completed prior to the certification application when it assumes responsibility, and this is the key issue. The certification can use anything they want, but they are assuming the responsibility for the results and is convinced that the body that carry out the evaluation complied with the requirements that we saw a minute ago in the other plan. The certification body must inform the client on all non-conformities, and if the client expresses interest in continuing the certification process, the certification body must provide information regarding the additional evaluation work necessary to verify that non-conformities have been corrected. This is very important and very used when we are talking about certification of services and certification of processes, because here in these two cases I'm putting as examples, it's easier to make the corrections and corrective actions to correct the non-conformity. But when we are talking about products that maybe the non-conformities are related maybe to the design of the product, these actions may be more difficult for the producer to correct. So this part needs to be very, very, very planified and clear for everybody. Well, here, after all the steps of the evaluation that are stated in the certification scheme have been done, the certification body needs to review that the result of all evaluation activities are documented, because the standard is asking the certification body to have a part of the process that is the review of all the results. The certification body shall have all the information and the results related to the evaluation to complete the review. So the review is the end of the process of evaluation. Independent, and needs to be independent. Needs to be someone that is was not involved in any other part. So this documentation is reviewed by an independent person. And then after making the review, we arrive to the decision part of the process. And as I said at the beginning, the function decision is based on the 4I principle and cannot be outsourced or subcontracted. So the review and the decision can be done by the same person. The certification body do not need to have two different independent persons, could be the same, but if they want, can be more than one. But the important thing is that the person or the group that review and take the decision is independent from any part of the process, from the reviewing of the application to this point. Because this is the different part of these standards in certification bodies, product certification bodies, and management system certification bodies has this requirement of independent review and decision. Well, now after everything is done and the decision is taken, the certification body must provide the client with formal certification documentation. And this formal certification documentation must include the signature or other defined authorization of the person from the certification body to whom such responsibility has been assigned in point 5.2, I think, where everything was established in the organization. Formal certification documentation should only be issued after or simultaneously with the following activities. When a decision has been made to grant or extend the scope of certification, and this decision is taken when the certification requirements have been met, and the certification agreement, that is at the beginning of the standard, has been completed or signed. Now the standard is asking in clause 7.8 to have a directory. The certification body must maintain information on the certified product that must contain at least the product that is certified, identification of this product, very clear identification of the product, the standard and other regulatory documents to which the conformity has been confirmed. So it's a link between the product and the documents, the list of requirements that the product is complying with, and information on the client, which is the owner, let's say, of the product. And at a minimum, the certification body must provide information upon request. Here, this clause is not asking for a public information. It's asking that at least the information needs to be provided upon request. In some schemes, and this part depends on the scheme, we have surveillance. Let's say when the certification of the product is not a photo, it's going to be a movie. So we are going to certify the product in a continuity basis. The standard is asking the schemes to have some kind of surveillance. And when this is required by the certification scheme, the certification body must initiate this process for the product or the products covered by the decision in accordance with the certification scheme. And here is the scheme needs to state if the activities that are going to be done in a year, every month, every day, every whatever, and needs to so the scheme needs to establish the frequency of the surveillance and needs to establish which requirements are going to be verified. Are we going to verify all the requirements? Are we going to verify a set of requirements? So all these things need to be established in the scheme. That's why the scheme is very, very important. When the continued use of a certification mark on this product that has been certified, if this is if marks are established or allowed in the scheme, so the surveillance is needed. You cannot allow a product to have a mark under a product certification process if there is not verification of the that the product continues to comply. So a surveillance that can be a periodic monitoring of products must be included to ensure the continued validity of the demonstration of compliance with the product requirement. And the same applies when the object that is certified is a process or a service. We need to have something in place that allows the certification body to ensure that the product or the process or the service continue to comply with the requirement. This is a clause 7.10 changes, very important, because when the certification scheme introduces new or revised requirements that affect the client, so changes can be established in the requirements of the product, the standard that establish the requirements that the product needs to comply, or can be established in the scheme, the certification scheme. In both occasions, the certification body needs to do what is said here. So the certification body must ensure that these changes are communicated to all clients, or I'm going to extend to all the relevant stakeholders. And also the certification body must verify the implementation of the changes and must undertake the actions required by the scheme to verify that the implementation was correct. The certification body should consider other changes that affect certification, including the changes initiated by the client, and must decide on the appropriate actions. This part is very important because sometimes the certification is not only in relation to the compliance to requirements, also the process, the production process, or the raw materials that are used to do the product are relevant to the certification. And when the client decides to change this, needs to inform the certification body, and the certification body needs to evaluate, assess how these changes are going to impact on the results of the product. So actions that to implement these changes, the actions the certification body needs to take to verify the compliance can include evaluation, review, decision. So in each case, the certification body needs to see or to decide which ones are going to be used. And in any case, if it's going, if the certification body decides to do all the, to review documentation, to assess the factory, each part needs to be done in accordance with the requirements established in the respective sections of this chapter in this staff. That's why here says 7475. And this is important also. When non-conformities in the process of verifying compliance in the time. When nonconformity with certification requirements is confirmed, either in a surveillance or otherwise, the certification body must consider and decide on the appropriate actions. When appropriate actions include evaluation, review, or decision, also need to be done as established in this standard. If the certification is terminated, suspended, or withdrawn, the certification body must take the actions specified in the certification scheme and must do all the necessary modifications in the formal certification documents, public information, authorization for the use of conformity marks, etc., to ensure that the narrow scope of the certification is clearly communicated to the client and specified clearly in the certification documentation and is publicly available and communicated to all the interest parties. If the certification is suspended, the certification body must assign one or more competent persons to formulate and communicate to the client. Here we are talking about suspension. It's not a termination or withdrawal yet. So the certification body needs to inform the actions necessary to end the suspension and restore the certification in accordance with the certification scheme, and also inform any other action required by the certification scheme in relation to this status of suspended. So, records. We always need records. The certification body must maintain records demonstrating that the certification body has met effectively all the requirements of the certification process. These requirements in this standard in 17065, all other requirements in the certification scheme, and the certification body shall preserve the confidentiality of the record. If the certification scheme involves the complete reevaluation of products within a cycle, another thing that needs to be defined, are we going to have cycles? How long is going to be the cycle? At least records from the current and previous cycle should be kept. Then the standard requires the certification body to have processes for handling of complaints and appeals. So the certification body must have a documented process to receive, evaluate, and take decisions about complaints and appeals. The body must record and track complaints and appeals, as well as the actions that have been taken to resolve them. Immediately upon receipt of a complaint or an appeal, the difference between complaint and appeal are established in the in part 3 in the vocabulary. The certification body, first of all, must confirm whether the complaint or the appeal relates to the certification activities for which it is responsible, and if so, it must address them. And the certification body needs to respond something to the complainant or the appeal. So the certification body should be responsible for gathering and verifying all necessary information to reach a decision on the complaint and appeal. The decision resolving the complaint or the appeal must be made, reviewed, and approved by persons who are not involved in certification activities related to the complaint or the appeal. The certification body should provide the claimant with a formal notification of the outcome and completion of the claim process, and must provide also the appellant with formal notification of the results and the completion of the appeal process. And then, this is all the process here, and then the standard has a clause 8 in relation to a management system. So the certification body needs to have a management system that support all the all the requirements, because the certification body needs to have records, needs to have evidence, needs to have documents that to establish the requirements of competence, or the requirements of impartiality, or the structure of the organization, how the process was made, if all the steps in clause 7 were taken in this order, and it was a complete assessment, and was a complete review of the application, and so on, so on. So, and the management system shall address the following. As in this part, all the CASCO standards are, let's say, the same. This is something then that you need to have in all CASCO standards, all the standards that we as accreditation body are using for accredit. All the level 3 standards have this. So you have two options. In this case, option B is the one that established that the management system can be established in accordance with ISO 9001, or you can have a management system that at least needs to have general management system documentation, needs to have a process to control of the documents, and to control the records, and keeping the records, and all the things we all know in relation to this, because the ones that are members of accreditation bodies, 17011 requires us to have the same. You need the certification body needs to have a management review, needs to have in place internal audits, needs to have a process of corrective actions and preventive actions also. So until here, it are the requirements of 17065, and Sharon May, I think that this is all the time I have, or no? So if you have questions in relation to this standard, please, it will be my pleasure to answer the question.
There is one question, Lily. Thank you. The question is, are there any testing methods or standards specified in the certification documentation? I suppose they're saying, is there any testing method or standards specified in the ISO IEC 17065 standard?
No, all these very, very, very important things that you are going to need to have a consistent certification process need to be established in the scheme. That's why the scheme is very important, and that's why I had here the next slide are in relation to 17067, but I think that we don't have more time. So Sharon May, if you want, Sharon May and Carlos, if you want, I can continue this in October.
Absolutely. We love that. We love that. We love that. We love that. And at that time, we will also have some more information on what will be happening with the ISO IEC 17065 standard. I see a lot of applause is going, Lily. So that means everybody's in agreement that we will take you again to just add to this presentation in October. Whoa, you want to see the claps and the applause is going.
Yes, I'm seeing. Thank you very much.
It's heartwarming. Thank you so much, Lillian, for this presentation. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. It was clear. And we look forward to engaging with you again in October when we're in Berlin. Carlos, you have a poll to launch, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Charmaine. Now we have the second part of the poll. You can share the poll question number 2. Please he can respond the answers. Regarding the JDSC documents workshop, the workshop was informative and met my expectations. The workshop did not my expectations. The workshop was informative, but the time spent was insufficient. Indicate the workshop topic of your choice in the chat.
So the final question is, if you have any topics for future workshops, let us know by just typing it in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine.
Don't know if Lily has left, but there seemed to have been one other question that was typed in the chat that
I'm
perhaps
here.
oh, excellent. So the other question is, if a CB has an ISO 9001 certified management system, to what extent does an assessor assess the requirements of clause 8?
Well, one thing that we need to assess as accreditation bodies, for example, two things that may be different. When you are looking to internal audit, you need to be sure that this internal audit was done not only in relation to 9001 only, but you need to be sure that 17065 was part of this internal audit. And more important is that the person that made the internal audit was competent in the requirements of 17065. So at least this you need to assess. And another thing that you need to reassess or assess a little bit more is the management review, because you need to be sure that as part of this management review, all the requirements of 17065 were taken into account also. So, and you may have a little more small requirements, but at least these two are very important, and you are the auditor of the certification body is not going to assess that part.
Thank you very much, Lily. And I think we could probably close the poll question now. Oh,
Okay.
Excellent, 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 excellent. And so we know we need some more time. Okay. All right. So we will check the chat for your indication. Thank you so much, Lillian, for your presentation and your awesome contribution to the JDSC this morning. Carlos, your final thoughts before we wrap up. We're just 2 minutes off.
Thank you, Charmaine. As we conclude this training event, we want to extend our gratitude to all the participants, speakers, Liliana, Liliane, and all the person who organized this event, Chantel, Melissa, Carla, and the others.
Nyaki.
Yes, thank you. And my co-chair, Sharon May, who have made this event successes. We hope that you found this information and this training valuable for your work. Thank you once again for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next meeting in Berlin. Sharon May.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's always our absolute delight to be here with you. We look forward to engaging with you in person in Berlin. Please send your comments to the JDSC email address, and we will take them on board, and we are checking the chat to see what you want us to train you on next time. Take care. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Melissa, Chantel, for awesome coordination this morning.